Christopher Columbus was late because a fleet thousands of times more powerful was already patrolling the oceans 80 years before the Santa Maria ever set sail. These ships were larger than football fields and carried armies capable of conquering nations. The Chinese emperor made a decision in 1433 that altered human history just as they were prepared to circle the globe. He ordered the fleet burned. But the world would look very different if the Chinese fleet had reached the Americas before the Europeans. You must look at the numbers to understand how close this reality was. Columbus took 3 small wooden boats and 90 men across the Atlantic in 1492, while Admiral Zheng He commanded a floating city in 1405. His fleet carried 28,000 sailors, soldiers, and diplomats on a flagship measuring 400 feet long. This vessel was so massive that Columbus's entire ship could fit on its deck with room to spare. This mission served as a projection of absolute power rather than simple exploration. The Ming Dynasty possessed the technology, manpower, and maps to reach California decades before Europe arrived in the Caribbean, meaning they only lacked the will rather than the ability. The Ming Emperor died in 1433 in our timeline, allowing Confucian bureaucrats to take control and destroy the logbooks because they believed the outside world had nothing to offer China. This alternate timeline assumes that order is never given. The fleet instead catches the Kuroshio Current, known as the Black Tide, which naturally pulls ships from Japan straight to the Pacific Northwest. They would have made landfall in modern-day Oregon or California instead of the Bahamas, finding towering redwoods and the vast resources of the American West rather than tropical islands. First contact would have looked nothing like the Spanish conquest because the Chinese wanted tribute rather than territory. The natives of the Pacific coast would have received silk, porcelain, and gold in exchange for acknowledging the emperor's superiority instead of facing immediate war. A trade network linking the Aztec Empire to Beijing likely would have formed along the Rockies. Biology functions independently of politics, so smallpox would likely have arrived 80 years early and devastated the native populations. The rebuilding civilizations would have adopted Chinese writing, Buddhism, and gunpowder long before any European arrived on the East Coast. British and French settlers pushing westward from the Atlantic by the 1700s would expect empty wilderness, but instead encounter a formidable barrier when crossing the Mississippi. The American West would already exist as a thriving extension of the Ming Empire, with fortified cities guarding the mountain passes. The Great Plains would serve as a buffer zone between 2 superpowers, preventing any manifest destiny or easy march to the Pacific. The United States would remain a smaller Atlantic nation bordered by the British to the north, the Spanish to the south, and Chinese power in the west. Global conflicts of the 20th century would focus on the resources of North America rather than Europe. The modern world emerging from this timeline looks completely different, with San Francisco serving as the capital of Eastern Fusang, a city older and richer than New York. English would function as a regional language spoken mostly in Europe and parts of the Atlantic coast, while Mandarin served as the common language of global trade. The Industrial Revolution might have started in Shanghai instead of London. The necessary components existed for this reality since the ships were built, the maps were drawn, and the winds blew in the right direction. One emperor's decision to look inward instead of outward determined the fate of the next 500 years. People often view the past as fixed, but Western dominance was never guaranteed. This outcome resulted from a vacuum left by a superpower that decided to stay home. The modern world might have spoken a different language if that single order had been reversed. Follow along for more examinations of the past if you enjoy exploring the fragility of history.